Last week was fun. It was interesting, and we celebrated a ton of people's lives. Just the feedback was incredible about all the people's lives that's been changed. Today, I've got the challenge of speaking to you guys about the burden of sex. And so I figured we'd start off with a story about food. It's not around anymore, but I used to go to this place. I figured it was one of the best places to get burgers in town. Now I think it's Mojo's. I keep giving these people shout-outs thinking I'll get free food, but it doesn't work. But there used to be a place called Gooch Brothers, and I went there. Some of you are like, bring it back. Went there, and they had this burger called the double or triple greasy Gene, and it was as good as it sounds. And man, they would stack this thing up like this, and it was kind of like this rite of passage or this challenge. I went over there one day, not expecting anything about that, but I went with some guys, and whenever guys travel in packs, they leave their brains somewhere else, and said, "Man, what do you think of that burger?" I said, "Man, that sounds awesome." They're like, "Yeah, well, you should try it." And I said, "Maybe I will one of these days." And then they called me a chicken, and I'm kind of like Marty McFly. You call me chicken. And so we ordered this thing, and it was bigger than any of the pictures I'd ever seen. And I was starting to sweat looking at it. And so I get into it, and so you got to get a strategy. Whenever there's like 6 or 9 patties, I forget. They're all like half-pounders or something. And whenever you get into it, you got to get a strategy because there's no way you can get a burger like that. So I remember I developed a strategy. I cut into it, and it was like lava. I mean, it was so hot. You think that a double cheeseburger gets hot because just the sweat going on between a bunch of hot beef, you know. It was rough. And so I cut that sucker into quarters, and so then I had 4 sandwiches, but they were each like that tall still. And I just remember, and then there was a big old basket of fries. And I remember starting in on this thing thinking, I thought going in, I'm not going to be able to do this. But as I got into it, it looked great, and it tasted amazing. And, I was worried that, you only have so long to eat it. But long story short, I ate the whole thing in 19 minutes. And then my whole basket of fries, and then Pastor Tim was with me, and I ate his whole basket of fries. And not because I was hungry at that point, because I was trying to get the taste of dead cow out of my mouth. And but it didn't really bother me then. It just didn't. Everybody was like, when I was going through it, "How you feeling?" I was like, "I'm going strong. I could eat another one of these," and all this kind of stuff. And I was just, I feel like I can do this. And I knew in my head that it wasn't a smart thing that I was doing. And I felt great as I was eating. I felt great as I was eating Tim's fries. I always feel good eating Tim's fries. And then that feeling quickly went away when I started walking out the door. After the event was over, I was like, ugh. And, I bet I read 4 magazines later that day. I just wasn't going anywhere for a while. And I felt miserably sick for about, 12 hours or something like that. It was gross. I never did it again because, my heart was saying, yes, I can do this. And matter of fact, I not only could I do it, I did do it. And I should have listened to my head and said, you don't have to be an idiot around these other idiots. And sometimes we get ourselves in trouble a lot whenever we listen to our heart. That seems to be the advice that the world wants to give. A lot of times we've been talking about this, this graphic, the circle of successful sex, and how difficult it is to stay inside that circle, and the world would be calling you outside of the circle all the time. And the best way that the world can call you out of the circle is follow your heart. What's your heart telling you to do? That seems to be a lot of people's advice on relationships. Well, just follow your heart, You can follow your heart with a puppy, just not another person, you know what I'm saying? Your heart will get you in trouble more times than it'll get you out of trouble. Your heart it's spoken about. Following your heart's not always the best advice. That's all I'll say. But Jeremiah 17:9, if you're following along, it says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. And who can even understand it? So whenever you give your, the follow your heart advice, follow the most deceitfully wicked thing possible in your life. Sometimes we've got to get out of our heart and more into our head and think through things a little bit more. Yeah, it's okay. Just as it was with the food, sometimes we find ourselves whenever we step outside of the circle of successful sex, it feels really good. I mean, we think what we're doing is great. And then once the event itself is over, then your heart goes from elation to sick. And your head starts kicking in saying, what a dummy. You ever just walk away from situations in life, regardless of what it is, and you're like, I shouldn't have done that, and I'm stupid. So the question today is basically what happens to us whenever we step outside that circle. There's lots of ways. We'll get into all the ways that you can step outside that circle. But what happens, that's going to be the big question that we have to answer today. Because I know that tons of people, we talked about how difficult it was to stay in, but whenever you step out of it, then what? So we got this kind of long story, and you'll understand I love that Amazing Grace song that we've been singing. I love it. It's powerful, but it was for a purpose the last few weeks. And this story, that's what we're going to talk about today. It's found in John chapter 8, starting in verse 2. It says, at dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts, talking about Jesus. So at dawn, he's basically going to the temple. It would be Herod's temple back in the day, in the temple courts. It says, where all the people gathered around him. And he sat down to teach them. I love Jesus' posture throughout this entire story. It says that he gets down on people's level. He sat down to teach the people. It says, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. This is like religious people. This isn't just religious people 2,000 years ago. It's religious people now. Whenever people get blinded by such religion and they have a pharisaical type heart going on, their biggest mission in life is to be on the lookout for other people's sin. And then whenever they discover somebody else's sin, it's their life's mission to put it on blast for the world to see and to know. And they would rather be seen as warriors of justice as they would lovers of the Lord. Really. And whenever it's really dangerous. I just want to tell you, because it's been a weird week. I just want to tell you, whenever if you're constantly looking for the flaws in other people's life, your heart's really sick. And it needs to spend some time with Jesus. And it needs to spend some time of realizing amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like you. It says the teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman that was caught in adultery. And it says they made her stand before the group. They said to Jesus, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. So they didn't hear rumors. It's like peeping Toms or something. They caught her in the act. Now notice what you don't see, like the biggest question that whenever you read this, I think, if you really think about it, is where's the guy? Where's the dude at? It's probably one of their boys, you see. Where's the guy at in this? And so it's unfair the way that, guys step out of the circle of successful sex and he gets nucks. And the woman steps outside the circle of successful sex and she's called a slut and a hoe. So I don't know what we do about that, but I'm just pointing it out that it's been going on for a really, really long time. It says, in the law Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say, Jesus? See, they were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. I just want to comment on this a little bit. They were, the only reason they were going to even sacrifice this girl just to catch Jesus in something. So whenever accusers, religious people in life, often they'll come in and they'll put you on blast and put you on trial. I've learned the hard way, don't sit there to try to defend yourself, because they're not looking for grace. They're not looking for mercy. They're not looking for forgiveness. They're looking for more reasons to trash you. That's all it is. And this woman was caught. I mean, what do you do when you're caught? Well, you're caught. They're saying, Jesus, I don't know if you know what the law of Moses is. Like, they're talking to the Son of God. Like, of course he knows what it says. And of course they know what it says. And they're trying to trap him. And it just says that Jesus stooped down. He bent over and he started to write on the ground with his finger. Religious people are always looking for sin in other people's lives. So what do you do if you've been caught? Have you ever been caught? That's a rough feeling, isn't it? Whether, one time I got, my dad was over at the house last night and we were talking, and I don't know how it got brought up, but one time I was 16, maybe 17, and me and some buddies were out like partying. I'm from a small town. It used to be a cruise strip, People used to cruise. People actually got in their cars and we actually would go see each other and not text and all that kind of stuff. And so, but anyways, one night we worked at grocery stores, so we had to hook up with a manager, and so got a hold of some liquor. Mad Dog 2020, that stuff will kill you. That's rough stuff, man. But it's like $2, And so we were broke teenagers. And anyways, had went through all of this, and this is a true story, and went back in for some more. One of my buddies had already, he needed to be home. He had a curfew. At least we were polite kids, and got him home for his curfew. So he starts puking at home and confesses everything to his parents. So I guess his parents decided to call my parents. And I was like, oh, well, I'll go back into the grocery store. And so I'm getting some more alcohol, right? Come walking out with my buddy. His name's Nick. Nick's like, hey, bro, what's your dad doing in the parking lot? You're smoking crack, man. That Mad Dog's playing tricks. I get over there to my car, and my dad's sitting in the front seat of my car. Hey, Pops. He says, son, it's time to get in the car. Anyways, I won't tell you the rest of the story, but there was nothing you could do at that point. You were just caught. Just caught. I didn't even want to tell him anything. Like, it's not as bad as it looks. It was every bit as bad as it looked, Dad. And that's the way we are when we get caught, You get caught. And whenever you get caught in something shameful, it kind of follows you around for a little bit. Some are a little worse than others. It depends on if you're running around with a ton of religious people or not. If you run around with a lot of religious people, they'll make your life hell for at least 2.5 years. And so you can wear this letter. There was a book back in the day, remember the Scarlet Letter? It's considered a classic. And this gal got caught in the act of adultery, and so they made her wear a big letter, and it just followed her around. It was a symbol of shame and condemnation. And so I don't know if you've ever been caught, but whenever you do, There's a weight to carry that you have to carry around with it seems like sometimes. It's kind of like your own scarlet letter. So I want to talk to you about some letters today if you're taking notes. And this has been on the screen for the last few weeks during that Amazing Grace song. And the letter I, it's for impure. This is a letter that you might carry around with you. I, for impure. I lost my virginity at the age of 15. And for almost the next decade, I slept around a bunch and wasn't a good thing. Had a very impure life growing up. Some stuff that you think it's okay whenever you're doing it, and then you get to later on in life, you're like, that was regrettable, you know? Not proud of any of it. It's something I seriously regret it. I don't know if you've ever done anything that you regret it. I never talked with married couples who both got married as virgins, sit there and say, you know what I regret? I regret not sleeping around when I was younger. This never happens, but the opposite always happens. It's regrettable, and honestly, I tell you some of my story because that's some of your all's story. Impure. The second one is A for adultery. A for adultery. And honestly, adultery used to be something, I mean, we've always heard about it. It used to be something you'd hear about less frequently, though, right? Now social media, used to be people would sleep around with whoever they was working with sometimes, Now it's like they're meeting up with people back from high school because they've got this connection with somebody from high school or people post emotional things on Facebook, and then there's other people out there with bad intentions, and so they'll come in and listen, it's always emotional before it ever becomes physical. It always starts with some sort of emotion. I think I don't know if it has. I think it's not just all those websites out there, the cheater sites or whatever. I think social media honestly has a lot to do with adultery. The next one's P for porn. P for porn. So many men are addicted to porn. Ladies, you're gaining in popularity too. I mean, you're gaining percentage points every year that goes by, it seems like. Porn, man, whenever I was a kid, look, the Playboys were usually traded around the gas stations in brown paper bags and stuff like that. And now people's got it on their phones. It's a little weird. You used to have to spend your allowance to get a Playboy, you know what I'm saying? And now people are just sharing links. It's crazy out there. Porn, I've actually counseled with married people that say their marriage is a wreck, but you come to find out that they thought it would be good for their marriage to introduce porn into it, to spice it up. I'm just going to go ahead and say, if you feel that way, because a lot of people feel that way, that's a wrong way to think. It's not good. And say, well, that's just how we feel about it. Well, remember the verse, Jesus' thoughts are not our thoughts, and his ways aren't our ways. His ways are higher. And nothing is going, it destroys intimacy and it devalues women. It really does. And that's never good, ever. And so I just want to say, if you're a guy that's addicted, or even a gal that's addicted to porn, the best thing you can do is confession. Not sure if it needs to be directly to your spouse immediately, but if you're a guy, find a guy. And because I'll just be honest, this is a church full of people that know about Amazing Grace. And I know a lot of guys that used to be chained down to porn, and now they're not. They've been set free from it. And it came through confession and accountability and men being men to each other and helping them out. Your wife's not your accountability partner. But we got some guys that would love to be your accountability partner. Help you out. Just call you up every few days. Know when you're weak. See, this is why it's important for confession. And to be really honest with other guys. Say, hey, I seem to struggle with this on my lunch breaks. Well, sure. No condemnation, but we can send you a text every day around lunch. See how it's going. I bet you stop watching porn if your pastor texts you. Pause. It works. Next one is G for gay. What did gay? I got a lot of thoughts on gayness. All right, I don't know what you call it. Now it's become like a culturally and politically accepted thing. And so, but here's what I'll say. This is not the battle. Some churches, they don't talk about it much, but if they do talk about it, it's always yelling at them, you shouldn't be gay, you shouldn't be gay, you're going to hell, this, that, and the other. All I would say is that if you struggle with same-sex attractions and all that kind of stuff, I'm seriously not mad at you. Not. I know the churches have been with a bullhorn in their hands and up to their mouth for decades. You think it's bad now? You should have went through the 80s. The churches it was all over the news, man. They were screaming at people, the gay people, and it was bad. There's always just been this war, it seems like, between like hyper-religious people and then like the gay community, and we've got plenty of gay people around here over the years. We had gay people. This freaks other people out. We've had gay people serve here. You're just condoning. Here's what I'll say: if you're gay, I love you, but you're outside that circle. And Jesus defined marriage between a man and a woman. I love you. What you're doing is wrong. I'm not here to condemn you. I'm here to tell you that Jesus isn't here to condemn you. He's here to point you towards a better future. And just giving some scarlet letters out here that people have to deal with all the time. A is for abortion. I'm very much pro-life. Abortion's wrong. But I'm the last guy that's ever going to throw a rock at you. If you've had one. I know we got a bunch of self-righteous people that'll go, I would never do that. Well, probably because you're a dude, number one, and you're not pregnant. It's never the answer, but religious people are really good at screaming, you're going to hell. You know what? They were scared. I think there's a bunch of, I don't agree with any of it, but it was scared. And I would just say, I've worn out my own plenty of sets of shoes in my life, walking through it. And worn out enough pairs of shoes of my own not to sit there and judge other people's walk. Because I've never been in their shoes. A message like today is really important for us not to, I hope it does two things. I hope, number one, it frees you from your past and sets you free to grab a hold of your future. And number two, I hope people walk out of here today and just whatever freaking rocks you got in your hand, leave them at the foot of the cross. Just lay them down. It ain't worth it. Abortion's, it's wrong. I don't think it does any good standing across the street from the abortion clinic screaming at these young girls as they're going in and coming out, telling them that they're going to hell. Isn't it funny how religious people are always looking for somebody to fight rather than somebody to love? At opener today, I'm looking for somebody to love. All we want to do sometimes with these cultural hot button issues and all of these letters I just went through is man, we just throw rocks. And listen, I understand. Listen, all these things are painful, especially whenever it happens in your own family, regardless of what it is. Adultery, abortion, you find out one of your kids is gay, and you find out your spouse is looking at porn. All of this stuff, it's devastating in the moment, but I'm just begging you, I'm telling you that divorce is not the answer, and throwing rocks is not the answer. Jesus has always been and will always be the answer. If we follow Jesus, we've got to walk and understand and receive His amazing. How in the world can we receive His amazing grace and not be willing to extend grace to others? Back to verse 6, it says, they were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. It says, but Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up. So you got to imagine it. What are you going to do with this woman? So Jesus stoops down and he just starts writing. And the religious people wouldn't shut up. They kept on. Jesus never even, initially, he never even responded to them with words. He was more concerned about the woman behind him. Whenever they kept on, it says he stood up. See, Jesus sat down to teach, and he stooped to forgive, but he stood up and rebuked religious people. He straightened up and he said to him, let any one of you who's without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. And it says again, he stooped down. He got up. He said, I know every one of you, you're all buttholes. There's a woman back here that's hurting. So he got down and stooped down again and he started writing on the ground. And what's interesting, I found this out. You know, some translations talk about him writing in the dirt or the dust. And that's true, but you got to understand Jerusalem basically geographically is in a desert region. And so when the wind blows, there's going to be dust and dirt and sand everywhere. But the floor that he was writing on, he was in the courts of Herod's temple. It was made out of we know historically that floor was made out of stone, which is pretty interesting. I'll explain that here in just a minute. It says, when he started writing on the ground, at this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first. So I've had this theory for a long time, and I still believe it. He was writing down the names of the mistresses, starting with the old people first. It says, they started going away, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. And Jesus straightened up and asked her, woman, where are they? Where are they? Has no one condemned you? She looks around and says, no one, sir. Neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin. When he says leave your life of sin, this is an invitation more than it was a commandment. We look at things as commandments, as boundaries, or as... It's interesting. In the Exodus, it says that whenever the law that they keep quoting, it says that literally the finger of God come down and wrote on the stone the Ten Commandments. And here you have God in the flesh literally bending down and writing in stone. It was never to condemn the world, it was to set it free. He's saying, this is not here to condemn you. He says, where are your accusers at now? He says, I don't see him. He says, I don't condemn you either. Now go leave your life of sin. And that is go leave your life of sin. That's an invitation, and it's not a commandment. Following Jesus, and he's saying, you don't have to live this way anymore. You don't have to. I'm not here to send you straight to hell every time and like all the religious people, or stone you or kill you every time you screw up. I'm just letting you know that there's a better way. You don't have to keep living this way. So 3 points real quick, if you're taking notes. Conviction is greater than condemnation. Conviction is greater than condemnation. Unless you give me explicit permission to do so, I won't beat your kids. You know how it kind of runs around within the circle of friends. Hey, we got some people that stay with us all the time. Our house is always full, and sometimes the parents won't say anything. But like if it's Candy, she's like, "Hey, beat my kids whenever you want." It's great. Just send me pictures. It makes me feel better. But I would never go out and discipline anybody else's child. I want to. Some kids drive me freaking nutty, man. I'm like, that kid just needs to be beat. And I think God's called me to do it. But I just don't. I don't. But listen, my kids act a fool in public. I'll discipline them. I don't discipline my kids because I hate them. I discipline them because I love them and I want to correct them. Because if they keep acting that way, they're going to experience a lifetime full of pain. And they're going to have to learn it eventually down the road the hard way. So I'd rather the discipline come from dad. A good father knows how to discipline his kids. That's what conviction is. Whenever you feel like the guilt that you carry, that's conviction. If you belong to Jesus, it's conviction. Conviction is the weight of the things that you're currently doing. Condemnation is, conviction's right now, condemnation's back then. And so, I think it's a good thing to live with conviction. If you step outside the circle or any area of life and say, well, I don't feel any conviction about that. It's probably because you're not saved. Because he's a good father, and good dads know how to discipline their kids. The second is, good news is greater than good advice. Good news is greater than good advice. Man, everybody just wants to give good advice, don't they? Well, don't do this, stop doing that. Do this, don't do that. And just the list goes on and on and on. They don't need good advice, they need good news. You don't have to tell them how to live. You just have to tell them how to follow Jesus. Don't approve of what they're doing. Just tell them how to follow Jesus. Following Jesus is an invitation. You don't have, life doesn't have, following Jesus is simply saying this. I believe that my best days and your best days are ahead of us. The future is greater than the past. Give them an invitation to follow Jesus. That's the good news. We need to focus as Christians more on good news than we do on good advice. Yeah. There's this poem that was sent to me this week, and pretty interesting. It says, it's about a man who fell into a pit and couldn't get himself out. So you got a man in a pit, can't get himself out. It says that a subjective person came along and says, I feel for you down there. An objective person came along and said, well, it's logical that someone would fall down there. A Christian scientist came along and says, you only think that you're in the pit. A Pharisee said, only bad people fall into pits. A mathematician calculated how he fell into the pit. A news reporter wanted an exclusive story on his pit. A fundamentalist said, you deserve your pit. A Presbyterian says, if you'd been saved, you've never fallen into that pit. The Methodist said, you were saved, and you still fell into that pit. A charismatic said, just confess that you're not in that pit. A realist said, now that is a pit. A geologist told him to appreciate the rock strata in the pit. An IRS man asked if he was paying taxes on his pit. The county inspector asked if he had a permit to dig the pit. A self-pitying person said, you haven't seen anything until you've seen my pit. An optimist said, things could be worse. A pessimist said, things will get worse. Jesus, seeing the man, reached down, took him by the hand, lifted him out of the pit. And that's what Jesus will do for you. We have all sorts of people in this life that we have to deal with. And they all have an opinion on us, on you. People don't need good advice, they just need help. They need good news. And Jesus, in his loving grace and mercy, will stoop down and lift you out of your pit. John 8:12 says, when Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. The third and final one is this: destiny is greater than history. Your destiny is greater than your history. What Jesus has planned for you is greater than what you've done. And do not buy the lie that so many people buy into, that I've screwed up, and I've screwed things up so bad that I might as well keep going. That's a lie. You don't have to do that. You can just stop where you're at. People. There will always be people in your life and an enemy of your soul that all they want to do is point a finger right directly in your face and accuse you. He's the accuser. And he uses other people to accuse you. And they point a finger in your face and say, yeah, but you did this. You did this. You deserve this because you did this. Fingers get pointed in my face all the time. Yeah, but remember this, and what about that? Don't argue with them. Just remember those words. Because you know, it's easy for you to sit there and think, yeah, I did do that. Yeah, I did screw up. But instead of sitting there dwelling on your past, just remember the words of the song, Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like Heath. Yeah, I once was lost. But now, though, I'm found. I was blind, but now I can see. I can see a future, and it's really bright because Jesus is in it. That you're always going to have people that's going to try to hold you down. When they point to your past, you point to Jesus. Listen, if we'll take that posture, you'll have some other people. If you need somebody come in and defend you, I'll defend you. I love standing up to self-righteous religious people. I'm pretty good at it these days. I usually start the conversation and it ends pretty quick when I go, "Oh yeah, butthole." It doesn't work well for them after that. The truth is, none of us need to be carrying rocks around. We don't. You've screwed up. I've screwed up. Don't let the pain of your past hold you from the hope of your future. Let's pray.